Hey everyone, welcome to Invisible Walls here on GameTrailers.com, episode 227. It is Q4, where I think we have a pretty good show today. Lots of big games are coming out, going to roll on throughout the rest of the year. Before we get on with it, want to remind people who maybe didn't watch the show the last couple weeks, we are back on iTunes. Tried it myself this weekend. It works. In fact, it just started downloading new episodes all on its own. I didn't resubscribe or anything. So maybe you guys just want to check your iTunes and it'll start downloading new episodes. Also, if you want to, give us a review on there. Prop us up or give us hate, whatever you want to do. Also, next week on GameTrailers.com is Zombie Week. Maybe a week late.
Have there been any important games with zombies come out this week?
No important games with zombies this week. But
next week is, yeah.
So think about Discovery Channel's Shark Week. This is kind of our take on that, obviously with tongue-in-cheek.
Is it zombie sharks?
Yeah.
Well, Resident Evil 1
Actually,
was a zombie shark.
Not to spoil anything, but...
Do they have laser beams on their heads?
Game Genie? Sounds like an episode of Pop Fiction.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out for you.
So if you haven't guessed already, we are going to talk about Resident Evil 6 in this show. Obviously, probably one of the more polarizing games to come out in recent memory. But don't forget, Zombie Week next week, every day of the week, some piece of zombie-inspired content, and some days, multiple pieces. We've been working on it for a while. Think you're going to like it, so come back every day to check out the stuff we're doing there. And also another reminder of our iOS app, which is on the iTunes Store now, completely free. Get all our original content on there. Also, as a quick note, we are working on an Android version of the app. We have heard your cries. It's not going to be done for a little bit, but it is in the works. Just want to let you guys know that because I've been getting a lot of questions about that on Twitter. So, Android version on the way. Here today to talk to you about all the latest and greatest in video games, the director of editorial from GameTrailers, Ryan Stevens.
Hello. And also, we are also working on a solution for an MP3 only version, also for the side mission briefing as well, and hopefully that will be sooner than later.
Side mission briefing will be on iTunes very soon as well.
Yeah.
Which is our other podcast. And Ryan, you're working on our review for Dishonored right now, which we can't talk about on the show, but maybe you can share when the review will be going up so that people can look for it.
I believe it's going up midnight Eastern time on, or 12:01 on Monday. That always makes it easier. The midnight time is always weird.
So midnight, Sunday night, essentially.
Yeah.
Eastern time.
Yeah, so if you're East Coast, 9 p.m.
9 p.m. No, if you're West Coast, 9
West
p.m.
Coast, sorry. I need a map.
We also have Mike
Compass.
Damiani on the show today.
What's up, everyone?
And, of course, my mang, Marcus Beer.
I just say I'm loving Mike's hair right now. I mean, I'm just going to sit here for the entire show and do
Rub it
this.
for luck.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best part about
Michael now.
shaving your head, though, is like just running your hand over it constantly. It almost turns into like an OCD.
It's like a carpet. It feels
I
really
just want to
good.
get a balloon, rub it on there, and just
like a
stick it on the curtain. Hello.
Yep. So anyway, there's Marcus. This is us. Let's get straight to it.
If you feel that impaling your enemy on rebar is inhumane, maybe just kick him into a cactus. It's just as painful, but at least you're going green.
So undoubtedly the biggest news story of the week, Cliff Bleszinski, Cliffy B, Dude Huge. What were some of his other nicknames throughout the last?
Founder of catscanners.com, catscan.com.
Halo.
I like to call him Cliffington.
Yeah. So he has left Epic Games, worked there for 20 years since he was 15 years
Man
old.
and boy.
Yeah.
He gets a gold watch and then gets
Heads
sent-
on out.
Yes, he gets to retire to North
I've
Carolina.
actually played his early games. Everyone, you should Google and download Dare to Dream and like Flames of Perdition. There's these like really weird point-and-click adventures.
Yeah.
It's really weird to see where he started.
Yeah, where he is now. But kind of a shocker. I mean, he kind of was the face, with all due respect to Mark Rain. He was kind of the face of Epic Games. Actually, two big departures from Epic Games now in the last few months. They had one of their big developers head up to work on BioShock. I think that was, 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. And now he's left.
Lead, right? Yeah.
So you got to wonder what the direction is going to be at Epic. Also, I think it's pretty obvious at this point that they knew this was coming, and maybe that's why the new Gears of War is being made out of house, perhaps.
Well, they bought People Can Fly, right?
Right.
And
But would you hand them Gears of War?
Well, Bulletstorm was technically pretty good,
Yeah.
and it if you get to the end, it does set itself up for a sequel, and the sales weren't there. So, and this
will
not
probably never
being this not being Gears of War 4, I can see. I didn't think it was the biggest thing, and they're obviously still under the tutelage of the main Epic Studios as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big property to hand off to another developer. I mean, look at all the uproar over 343 handling Halo. I mean, Gears, you could almost argue at this point, is almost as big a franchise as Halo. But bit of a shocker there.
I think it's been coming. I think there's
He's got to be burnt out, right?
Yeah, he's been there a long time, and he's experienced the highs and the lows, and I think this probably is a good time for him to make a break and recharge the batteries. I mean, he's certainly he's a very well off young man.
Yeah, I don't think he has to worry about money for the rest of his life.
I say young man, he's like 7 years younger than me, but
and he's got like 20 Lamborghinis, and
yeah,
I think he's okay.
He's done well for himself, and you know what? If he's going to go off and recharge the batteries, I mean, he's taking a break.
Yeah.
He's retiring. He's not going
off.
Yeah,
he's not going to leave games.
Brew beer or whatever. So I think he'll go off and travel for a bit. Maybe
he just got married as well. I'm sure maybe he wants to spend some time with his new wife.
I'm thinking bodybuilding circuit. The world.
We'll see him in the Olympics in 4 years.
I think he'll come. He'll be back inside a 12-month or so. I mean, he's such an integral part of the industry.
iOS games.
It's in his blood, and I wouldn't be surprised that if he doesn't come back to Epic, he'll come back and start his own thing. He's got the money, he's got the funding, he's got the cachet. He could do anything he wants. And
Agreed.
I've disagreed with him over a couple of things over the years, but I still got a lot of time for him because he does give a shit.
Yeah, I think that's just being human. You're not going to agree with everybody all the time. So, good luck, Cliff. Enjoy your time off. Hopefully, we'll see you back in the industry in 12 months or so. Enjoy your time with the new bride and wherever you may tread. All right, so the first game we're going to talk about on the show is Pokemon Black and White 2. But actually, before we get there, I wanted to add one more thing to the Cliffy thing. If you actually watched our episodes of the bonus round, he's been on the last 3 or 4 episodes of bonus round, he's tipping his hand in that show. In fact, I would recommend you guys go back and kind of watch it. If you have been watching all the episodes for the last few weeks, the writing was kind of on the wall there. He makes a couple comments where he's like, yeah, kind of burning out a little bit. Kind of takes some blame for how third-person shooters have kind of turned into this kind of rote genre. You could tell that he was kind of reaching the end of the plank there a little bit. So go back and check those out. Definitely worth it, especially in hindsight now that you know what happened. So let's move on to Pokemon Black and White. Mike, you reviewed the game. I reviewed the last Black and White. You were definitely a lot more harsh on the sequel to that game than I was on the original. What were your big issues with the game? You gave it a 7-1.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I know people get angry. I mean, the bottom line, I called it out for being more of the same.
Yeah.
And while Pokemon is still a good game, I've been playing these. I mean, I only got into Pokemon 6-7 years ago, 2005.
Is that true?
Yeah, I didn't start off as a original, but I went back and played, and through Pop Fiction and stuff, I've played all those games to death. And I just...
You think maybe that's the problem, that you've played so many of them in a short period of time versus having played them as they came out?
That could possibly be a factor, but my gripe is, I don't feel burnt out. I still want more Pokemon. I just see potential in that game. I see the missed opportunities. And whereas a lot of people just want more of the same, I think you got to understand my perspective that I don't want Pokemon to completely change. I don't want a complete overhaul where it's no longer Pokemon anymore. I would like it to take a little bit more risk. I don't want it. I still want it to be the same formula in terms of you catch Pokemon, you battle, but just the core mechanic of battles in that game. I hear the counter argument that if you try and make it real time, if you had an ATB system like Final Fantasy, you ruin the competitive balance of it. And to be fair, when I go online in that game, 9 times out of 10 people are using hacked Pokemon anyway. The online in those games is terrible from a standpoint of someone actually watching over the system and making sure people are playing fairly. You got to find friends or go to an organized tournament. That's the only way you can play competitively in that scene. And honestly, if I'm not gonna, the single player games, it always feels like it doesn't push you enough to use that depth that the game offers. You need to make a well-balanced team. It's not till the end game that you really have to utilize that. Most of the time, you can just straight up use your starting Pokemon or find a good Pokemon, grind them out, just use them as your starting Pokemon through every battle, and you have almost no resistance along the way if you the 8 gyms and earning those badges.
Yeah.
and they always fall back onto.
This is a DS game too. That's one thing we should bring up. It is not a 3DS game, which probably is the first disappointment. It's like, why are we playing this DS game?
It is a disappointment, but the obvious reason is, listen,
see
like
3D sprites.
Yeah.
these games sell. They want it to sell to the most people. Your 3DS can play a DS game. They're like, listen, we're not going to alienate all these DS owners. We're just going to put this one out until 3DS has a little bit more, legs under it, and that's the whole reason behind it. But
Money.
It is a little bit. It is a little bit lazy, though. I mean, every third iteration, every time they come up with gold, silver, then you come out with like the next one, or black and white. Everyone thought it was going to be gray, but it's actually the first direct sequel to the story. You do if you care about that type of stuff, they actually do give you a little bit of that. They do throw in some updates to it to keep you kind of interested in what you're engaging in. They do some Pokemon Studio thing where you battle against a green screen and you gotta do the right actions. It's not like QuickTime event, but you gotta do an attack that's strong against fire type. And if you don't have that, you're screwed. Then they screen it in front of an audience and you get a reaction. You see the crowd Paper Mario cheer or whatever, and they kind of leave. Stuff like that. It's
that doesn't have a whole lot of value.
It's not deep enough to make me this game is really good. It's just a side attractions kind of cool, but I'm not going to spend hours on that type of mechanic.
Can I ask you real quick, since this is a direct sequel for the first time, right?
Within the mainline games,
yeah.
it's the first direct story
is that,
continuation.
But going back to something you said earlier, is that something that's cool, or is that actually more on the lazy side? Are they reusing a lot of assets?
Oh,
and stuff
they're
like
definitely
that?
reusing a lot of assets. As I said, I didn't really get into Black and White since you had reviewed it, but a lot of people in the office who were really into Pokemon as well, who had played Black and White to death, were walking by why are you playing Black and White?
Yeah.
And
it looks identical.
Yeah, there are new areas. The whole starting area where you begin is new. They threw a whole new post-game area in there, but a large chunk of the game is the same environments. They kind of redid the gyms and they redid some of the NPCs to have a different look, but it's largely the same game. And the story, Team Plasma, the same thing. A team came in, tried to conquer the world.
But remember, the first Black and White actually it tried to do a really cool story, because the story in that game was basically, it was PETA. It's you have these people inside the game that care about the Pokemon and think putting them in balls is barbaric, and it actually tried some semblance of depth in its plot.
And in this
but
one,
ultimately it was bullcrap.
Yeah, and in this one they try there's still those holdovers of Team Plasma they're hellbent on using Pokemon to obliterate, remake the world. And there's ones who have reformed. And they're we want to protect Pokemon, so they're trying to have this little dichotomy going on. It's whatever. I know people are into that, but I don't play the Pokemon games for the story. I do like the quirky character stuff, but I'm not getting a deep, meaningful narrative out of this, and that's not why I play these games.
So do you think that people who are Pokemon fans should buy it, or do you think this is a case where they finally need to put their foot down and be no more?
Well, they should put their foot down. It's still a good game. But if they want Nintendo to take more risks, they should put their foot down and not buy it. Is that going to happen? No.
Right, but should they?
They really should. You should look at you can get enough out of Black and White. You don't need this game. If you want those damn Pokemon, trade. Actually, I don't know if you can trade back for them because it's advanced generation. I haven't tried that out. I don't know if you can trade back Black and White to exclusive Pokemon to Black and White. That might not work, but you can get the same type of basic experience out of Black and White. They look the same. They feel the same.
Those games still resell for a lot of money. One thing
the older, going back and trying to track down copies for Pop Fiction and stuff. The older copies, all the local stores, the retro game stores are always sold out. Every time they get in a copy of original Gold, original Silver, Pokemon Yellow, they always are
So
gone.
It's not like you can go back and find the original Black and White and get it for a really cheap price. It's still going to be pretty spendy. So which would you say they buy?
I don't know if the original Black and White is that expensive just now. I think that one you can get on the cheap, actually.
Yeah?
I think you got to go back a few probably got to go back to maybe Diamond and Pearl might be harder to find now.
Okay.
And those two. But I don't think Black and White is there just yet. I think it's too soon. I think you could probably find those on the cheap, honestly.
So you would recommend going back and buying the old one then?
If you can buy the old one, play that one.
Can I just say real quick, I love how art is imitating life. There's this gray market for old Pokemon and stuff like that. It's great.
I don't know. It depends how different. If you're really going for price, if it's a few bucks difference between you, buy. You want the newer one. It might have a few new things in it that you'd like. But then again, are you sending the right message? And do those people even care like I do? Do they?
Yeah.
There are enough people who do not give a shit what I'm like saying about it. Like they saw, okay, he said all these things are good about it still. He complained about all this other stuff, whatever. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We don't care about that shit. It's still a Pokemon. We don't care about it. Me, it's like, I want to see a Pokemon game where I throw my Pokemon in battle and it's like maybe real-time battle or something. Like you still only have 4 moves, but you can only like do that, or team-based battles aren't like in real time. Just something different with the battle system, because you do have to grind through all those battles.
Well, remember in the first Black and White, they had like the 3-on-3 and the rotating battles. I mean, they did switch it up a little bit there.
Yeah, but that's still there, and even those, even the
They don't
single player,
change
they
things
don't
that
do
much.
enough. They
You're
don't do
right.
enough.
I
In
agree.
multiplayer, that does a lot.
Yeah.
But in the single player, they don't push back enough to force you to like really tap into the game's like biggest strength.
Yeah.
And then even the turn-based battle system, it still has that strength of like all the moves you gotta know, all the weaknesses. It only comes out in multiplayer, and as I said, I don't like how the multiplayers handle that game. You can technically access like some kind of like world battle thing right off the bat, but like getting into the trading and stuff, they always put that barrier there. Like
Right.
you have to get far enough
Which
in the
makes no
story.
sense.
Like right now, I'm playing through like Silver to try and trade Generation 1 and Generation 2 Pokemon. You gotta play through like to the 3rd or 4th gym to Eureka City or something to access the time capsule. Like I had to play 3 hours into the game before I could utilize this trade feature. And that's like the de facto. And I'm like, there should just be an option. Like, are you familiar with Pokemon? Are you a veteran or something?
Are you
Like,
an idiot?
Like when they ask you those questions, like, are you a boy or girl? What's your name? They should ask you, are you familiar with Pokemon? Yes.
Right.
Will you like to activate all these features from the get-go? Yes. And then like you just jump in. I understand people always think you'll break the game because you could trade for super high Pokemon, but that's why they have the dumb badge system where it says Pokemon won't obey you till you have an X
Right.
badge that gives you control of a level 20 or higher or whatever.
Right.
They built in that system. They just don't
It's
trust.
there already, yeah.
Yeah, they don't trust it till they put that extra layer. Like, no, you got to progress far enough as well to make sure you don't like break the game or whatever.
And meanwhile, it's already broken and hacked, and people are playing with hacked Pokemon. And
Yeah, I mean, in defense, like for online, there should be a better way. I do like that you can do it so easily. It helps out a lot. Don't get me wrong with stuff, and it's cool to hack games. But if you want to try and play online,
it's cool
like,
to hack games.
you're playing online, you see like a fire type Pokemon who should not have a lightning move, and you throw out your water type, and you're like, all right, I'm using Surf on you, and then boom, lightning bolt hits you,
Right,
and you're
right.
like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That does not work like that. And then they somehow forced, one time a guy actually forced me to make my turn. Like it picked my move for me, and I was like,
Whoa.
I was like, okay, online's broken here, so.
And meanwhile, the wait goes on for a legitimate single-player Pokemon RPG on the consoles that isn't something that's just hacked together.
Those guys,
Which it would just be a license for Nintendo to print money.
You would think so, but one of the Masuda, when we interviewed him for Black and White a few years ago, we asked why you do a console one? It makes so much sense.
And actually give it great production values and give it the TLC that you give to, say, a Zelda game.
Their answer was they think one of the reasons Pokemon is so viable and why it sells so well and why it is the hit it is because of its portability. That people like it on the portable system. They like taking on the go, the whole trading system, like meeting someone in person. That's their philosophy.
Right, but you can link that huge console RPG into the handheld version, which
agree.
just incentivizes people to buy it
I
even
agree
more.
with you. I totally agree that they could do an amazing console Pokemon. They could do an awesome Pokemon MMO.
I'd love
it. I mean, some great online stuff, but they're never going to do that.
Sorry, Brian and I are glazing over.
No, I just wanted
No,
to.
no, I still
give you
haven't
my eye.
haven't ever played a Pokemon game.
Well, WoW already beat them to it apparently, and Mists of Pandaria.
I haven't played that either.
They have a Pokemon mini game thing in there with the pets now.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's just like they basically made Pokemon.
Patrick pulled out like Santa's little helper. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm ready to battle.
I
What's
did
going on?
I did it
resigned
already.
from World of Warcraft. I am no longer playing that game. Thank you very much.
All right, so probably the other biggest news story from the last week, they unveiled the Zombies mode for Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Modern Warfare has Spec Ops. The Black Ops franchise has Zombies. Funny how the thing has taken off when it was just kind of this little hidden extra in World at War.
Yeah, you had to unlock it in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then it became so popular that they released a patch so it was unlocked from the get-go.
And they supported it a lot in the original Black Ops. Some of the DLC was just for zombies. They have a huge audience just for that mode. There are some people who buy Call of Duty just for the zombies mode and don't even really care about the rest of the game. So they debuted it. It looks like they've taken the response to that mode to heart. It's almost turned into its own campaign B inside Black Ops 2. They had us over there to take a look at it for like half a day last week. Really shocked at how much energy and time has gone into building what people used to think was this kind of side attraction. It's actually got a narrative that goes all the way through it. There's this new bus that you get on that you actually travel from one location to the next. It has this new system called buildables, where you can just take scrap that you find in the world and build like objects that you can use. You can create weapons, you can create defensive items, you can create battering rams that you can use to kind of bust into the next area that you need to go to. If you actually watch the trailer they released, they show two of the characters have like these weird things that are like a car door with like a swimming pool ladder that they have constructed to give them like these movable shields that they can kind of like plant in the ground. Really looks like they've gone all out this time. They showed kind of the campaign map for it. It's this map that you kind of follow. I was just shocked. I mean, one thing we should remember too is that if you look at Black Ops compared to Modern Warfare 3, there was so much more game in Black Ops. I mean, you had that like top-down shooter, you had Zork, all this crazy hidden shit in there, zombies, the multiplayer, the campaign. It looks like that they're, again, Black Ops 2 looks like it's going to trump Modern Warfare 3 as far as the amount of content you're getting on the discs. So, pretty big deal to have that separate team to build that. I was pretty shocked by how robust it was. I just figured it would be like prior games.
Is it the same team that's doing, because obviously Activision have got the Walking Dead zombie shooter for next year. Is it the same team, do you know? Because, I mean, this might have been a smart way for them to say, you know what, let's get this team doing this now for Blops 2 and getting their everything, their feet wet,
It's still
if you
Treyarch,
will.
isn't it?
It is Treyarch.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to Treyarch, there is kind of one wing of their whole studio that is like the zombies wing. And I mean, they've done it to the nines. Like the hallway has blood smeared down it, and like there's like body parts. Like they've actually like decorated their
Ex-Infinity
office.
Ward employees.
Yeah, smeared on the wall.
Yeah.
But they've actually decorated their offices just for the section of their team that does the zombie mode in the games, which kind of shows you how important it is to them. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but it is a pretty big deal as just another extra inside that game.
Did you get to play it?
They did not let us play it at all. They talked about it for 30 minutes and then showed us like all the media that they were going to release a few days later before everybody else, so we could get the gist of it, so we could sort of create content around it. But we did not get to play it yet. And they didn't tell us everything either. Like, we still don't know who the 4 characters are. Obviously, you remember from Black Ops 2, there was like Sarah Michelle Gellar, Danny Trejo, and a couple others. I can't remember who the other 2 were.
Wasn't it George Romero? You're talking about the DLC stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
And they haven't announced who the 4 characters are going to be for this one. But it's completely cooperative, drop in, drop out. There's even a mode where you can play humans versus zombies, and the other, it's like 8 total, and then it's any combination of those 8. It can be 2 versus
win,
6,
though?
4 versus 4.
With like, I mean, because in zombie mode it was always like, how far can you go? I
Well,
mean, there
this
was
one
like
is-
win scenarios, but I mean, like with the narrative structure, I mean,
Survival. So they still have that mode as well. They still have the
Okay.
classic zombies mode where you just try to survive as long as you can.
Yeah, it's basically a take on Horde.
Right.
With
And
a little
then
bit
the
of
new
build up
mode
and
is
stuff
called
like that.
Transit, and there is a finite ending to that. That's why I was saying it's kind of like a campaign. There's actually a set number of locations you have to go through and clear with a narrative that kind of follows all the way through it.
Yeah, I'm interested. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I see the appeal of zombies, but it never appealed particularly much to me.
Me either.
But it's got my interest peaked a bit.
Does it feel Left 4 Dead-ish?
Yeah. Yeah, the transit mode definitely feels Left 4 Dead-ish. Because instead of going into that like safe room at the end of each level, you get on a bus. But it's kind of cool because the bus actually
Lee
comes
trucks.
under attack and it's alive, so to speak. Whereas that safe room was just a room where everyone collected and kind of got ready for the next round. Here, the bus serves that purpose, but zombies are attacking the bus while you're in it. Once you get to the new area, you can stay inside the bus if you want to, use it for cover if you want to. It's not like it's a canned cutscene and it just disappears. But obviously there's some risk-reward there. Being inside the bus, you may feel safe, but if the bus gets flooded with zombies, then obviously you're in a bad position because there's nowhere to run. So I feel like they've made a lot of smart choices to it. Again, it's just a value add for a game. It's kind of crazy that they go that far, but looking pretty good so far.
And in 18 months' time, it will be its own game.
And that's the big fear, is that it becomes so popular and so big that it ends up being spun off.
And that'll come out at the in March, and we'll have Call of Duty in November, and Activision will bookend the years nicely.
That could be it, or it could be a case where they sell the Zombies game separately, and then if you've bought the next Black Ops, whatever that is, then maybe you get a discount on buying the standalone zombie game. Who knows?
Or if you don't use your season pass, you can make a pact with Satan, and then you get a 50% discount, but no cheat codes.
But
But if you
also-
pre-order,
But you also have to like
getting-
it on Twitter,
it is really
Facebook,
starting to
Bebo,
get-
yeah, it's getting really
MySpace,
confusing, man.
and basically sacrifice Justin Bieber.
Oh.
He's in NBA 2K13.
All right, next we're going to talk about a game that, to be quite honest, I have become a little bit concerned about because of the limited access that we've been given to the game, and that is Medal of Honor Warfighter. They've really been kind of bandying about this same demo from trade show to trade show. I've never really had a chance to sit down and play more than maybe a 5-minute chunk of the campaign. Ryan, they had an event this week.
Yeah, I got to see the game a couple of times. At PAX, we saw a part of a level. I don't believe it was the whole mission. We saw maybe, again, like a 5-minute section. Last week, Chris and I got to do multiplayer, which we're not allowed to talk about, and that was the juxt of the meetup. But we did get to do 2 full missions. Karachi, which is the kind of, you know how sometimes games have that midpoint, let's do something a little out of the
box,
regular,
yeah.
and it's a driving level. And their big thing is we're with EA, so we're working with the Need for Speed developers.
Right.
And it's a fun little race. You try to ram into some guy. You have a little locator, like chickens are going across the screens as you go through like rural Pakistan. And it was okay. I mean, it is what it is. It's like a 5-minute little
Way to
stopover.
break things up, basically.
Yeah, and Frostbite looks great. We were playing on PC.
The game does look amazing.
Yeah, it looked really good.
Yeah, graphically, it's up there.
And then we got to play the Somalia level, which they've talked about a lot. It's called Shore Leave, and we got to play the entire level. It took about maybe 20 minutes. So I'm kind of curious. It looked like maybe the game's, I don't know if we got to see all the missions on the mission select screen. Looks like the game's maybe 12 or 13 missions. But if they're all maybe 5 to 20 minutes, it's like kind of
5 to 20 minutes?
Well, if the car racing one was, and like I said,
Is the car racing one counted as a proper mission?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So unless they presented to it as like some sort of cutout, maybe they just took us straight to the car racing. Maybe there was a gunfight ahead of time, but we loaded that straight from the menu. So I don't know.
Well, remember Battlefield 3's campaign was pretty damn short too.
Yeah, but I mean,
is this a downloadable only game for $15?
Well, hey, I am speculating here.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if it's going to be in the kind of maybe more on the shorter side. But who knows? Maybe there's going to be some grand melees.
It didn't stop Battlefield from selling.
But
I mean, it seems like
But I think Battlefield is no ifs about it. Battlefield is a stronger franchise than Medal of Honor because Medal of Honor has become rather tarnished over the last couple of years.
Well, it also disappeared for
it
half
disappeared
a
for a while,
You know,
and then came back and
it cut
disappeared
its
up its
teeth
own
on
ass.
it's cut its teeth on World War II, and now it's like everything trying to play catch up to Modern Warfare.
Yeah.
And this is their messaging is since Black Ops is taking place in the future, this is the only realistic war game.
This is
coming out
taking place
year.
in the now.
But their big thing is
You
that
got to
they're-
find some angle though, right?
Their
I mean,
big
you used to
thing is
work
they're,
in PR.
they're
You know how it
going
is.
for authenticity. They've talked to a bunch of tier
Tier
one
one.
operators. They've like the Finnish.
They should just
circus
call the
team,
game
I don't-
Tier 1. I mean, they say it so much.
And they got
But it's funny because I will give them. They are doing like I talked about. The car kind of gives you a stop of variety, but in the storming Somalia mission, it is a lot of shooting guns. But then we're trying to take out snipers. We're breaching doors. We're riding little drones. You're doing a sniper part. They did pack in a lot of variety in that 20 minutes. I can obviously see why they tried to showcase that. The level we saw at PAX, again, that was kind of storming in on a place, but then halfway through you're magically teleported to like a machine gun on a chopper, and you're it's the turret section. I mean, it's cool that there's variety, but a lot of this variety is kind of the stuff we've seen before, and when you're grounded in reality, it's kind of hard to step away, I feel.
Yeah.
Especially when like a first-person shooter in this regard, as opposed to a game like Half-Life or what was that game where you could kind of travel in time? The ones that have more like Singularity, have like more adventure aspects, or just a little more discovery. I mean, yeah, I know the games always have the collectible bits of intel and stuff like that. The metagame in this was a little weird. When you breach a door, if you get headshot, it does the slow-mo thing. If you get headshots on the people, you unlock different ways to breach the door. But as far as I could tell, we saw one unlocked one. It's completely cosmetic. Like
that game looks just like Modern Warfare 3. Like, you look at footage of that game, and unless you're seeing the PC version, which looks gorgeous, it looks just like Modern Warfare. Like, the breach, the slow-mo, it's like the line is getting so hard to discern at this point between one military shooter and the next. I mean, it's almost like a fun game to play, to, like, put a couple up and say, which one is it? Give someone, like, 3 seconds to try to figure it out. Like, I think most people would not be able to figure it out if there was no HUD.
Well, they all look like Michael Bay movies anyway now.
I think, it's trying to get in this variety, but I think it's really going to try to stand on its kind of aesthetic settings. You're going all over the world. It's doing that. You're jumping from Navy SEALs to Marines and other SAS people and stuff like that.
Just like Call of Duty.
Exactly. But I think, that's what it's trying to do to make itself, keep fresh. Because when you get to it, it is a lot of,
shooting,
cowering behind stuff and trying to figure out where to aim your gun.
Yeah.
Does EA need to have 2 military franchises? I mean, obviously they're trying to compete where it's like, all right, we have Battlefield 1 year, well, Medal of Honor the other.
It's the same thing that they're doing at Activision with Treyarch and Infinity Ward.
With Activision. But when they do such a middling job...
I had fun with the level. I don't know if it's going to hold its own. But
I mean, Medal of Honor still sold okay, the last one. I mean, it sold a couple million units.
Even if it's not going to steal the throne, you can ride on those coattails. There's so many people into it right now. Like, modern military is pretty big. I mean,
when 2 or 3 million copies sold is a failure, I think a lot of publishers will take that failure. I mean, granted, EA has a lot more marketing muscle than a lot of the other guys. But, I mean, a 2-year development cycle, probably worldwide, they probably sold 4 or 5 million. So, I mean, ultimately, it is a lucrative decision for them as far as, like, making money as a company. I think aesthetically or personally, it seems a little shady. But you can't blame a company for trying to turn a profit.
Well, I guess we'll see.
Good way to show off your killer rig, though.
Oh, yeah.
Frostbite 2 looks good.
Well, it's just like Battlefield
Frostbite 2 is gorgeous.
Yeah,
It is.
looks really good.
But it also does look very similar to Battlefield 3.
I'd be curious to see if there's been any tweaks to see if I think it's probably going to be maybe splitting hairs, but it's been a year. I'm curious to see if the PC version has a little extra fidelity in there.
But the smoke looks the same, the explosions look the same.
Some of the clouds looked really amazing at some point. Some just little things.
You just wanted to lie there, put a daisy.
They all look
in
like
your mouth.
dicks. It was weird. I'm like, look at that cloud. It looks like a dick.
What the hell did I just see, Ada?
All right, so here's a section of the show you've probably been waiting for, where we talk about Resident Evil 6. I reviewed the game, as I mentioned last week. I was playing through it after getting back from Japan. So you obviously know the bulk of my opinions on the game, but obviously we have 3 more people here. It is a very polarizing game. Scores have kind of been all over the charts. So definitely worthy of discussion. Marcus, I've seen a few tweets from you this week. What is your
tweet?
But what is your overall impression of the game so far?
I'm disappointed. And I mean, I had this bad feeling coming out of E3 from what was a frankly underwhelming demo, where they showed off all the 3 campaigns. They didn't show off Ada Wong, and unfortunately, I started playing this on Monday this week, so I wanted to be fresh for this particular episode, and I played it all day Monday. I started off with the Leon mission, and it was a chore. It was a chore to play Resident Evil, and that to me that's a tragedy.
So what did you find about it that was a chore?
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, there are some mechanics issues. I mean, camera's a little bit wonky. It does tend to pop in and out. I mean,
So did you play Resident Evil 5?
I played a little bit of it. I really didn't like RE5. I really.
Well, fair enough. At least you're saying you didn't like RE5 or RE6.
Yeah, I mean,
because the camera is exactly the same as it was in Resident Evil 5.
I liked RE1 and RE2. I really did like those games. I liked them all.
Did you like Resident Evil 4? Did you ever play that?
I never got around to playing that, unfortunately. It's one on the list, but I mean, like everybody here, I've got a list yay high.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's definitely the RE1 and RE2 to me were just great games. They took one of my favorite franchises in Alone in the Dark. They took that and moved it forward. And
now you wouldn't say that those mechanics are better than the mechanics in RE6, would you?
Oh no! I mean, I'm just saying that. And this is what I'll say. I like the survival horror aspect, and that's why I wanted to play the Leon section, because it was the one when I saw the demo that was more old school Resident Evil to me.
Well, the first 10 minutes of it,
Well,
pretty
this is
much.
it.
And after
Well,
that,
I'd actually say a little bit longer. I mean, the one that stands out to me is actually the graveyard, just for building the tension.
Yeah.
Where you're walking through the graveyard, they seem to have just squidged the camera in a little bit closer, and it's misty, and you hear the groans and the moans, and the zombies come at you. But Capcom have this innate gift in this game, in my opinion, of cheapening everything they do in the pursuit of melodrama. And these little cheap things where you make your way through the graveyard, you have to get the key, and a dog's got the key, and then it runs out. You have to walk all the way back through the graveyard again, and then you have to go all the way back to the cathedral. It's those,
which takes like 15 seconds.
Well, no, it does. I mean, it doesn't. Because I mean, if the mindset I'm in, I've got my weapon up. I'm looking around. I'm wondering where everything's going to come from. I've got my AI backup, and I do have to say the one thing that I find a huge positive over RE5 was how smart the AI was in comparison to the previous game. The AI
I think
partner,
it's still
well,
not good.
I don't think it was. Oh, let's face it. In RE5, it was dumb as a bag of shit.
Enemy AI or partner?
No, partner AI.
I thought you were talking about
partner
enemy AI.
Partner AI in this one is more forgiving.
Well,
Well,
they
it's
can't,
smart.
they can't
It's
die
smart.
though.
They don't die.
Yeah, there's no,
you don't have
there's
to
no
worry about it.
penalty. For
But I
them,
mean, it's just. I mean, it felt like the partner in Resident Evil 5 was just there as a hindrance, and really did. It was like.
But on the flip side, in RE5, you could use them as a mule, and so you could use them to help with your item sort of manipulation.
if you trusted them not to use your items.
Yeah,
after time.
we can talk. We can definitely talk about the inventory stuff, because I mean that's been reworked. And but I'll just say, sort of like, sum up a couple of things briefly. That they seem to have kept some things that while they were acceptable 10 years ago or 12 years ago, are not acceptable now. If I have a character that can fall 150 feet down a waterfall and pop up with no issues whatsoever, why the fuck can't he get over a cardboard box, for God's sake, when I know I'm gonna be coming back round there?
But every game does it. Every game uses like a little knee-high fence or a pile of boxes to keep you from going where you're not supposed to go.
This is a criticism of all games who do that. But I mean, then there's the other things where it feels like, again, this cheapened melodrama where you walk on that Leon mission where you walk into the amphitheater and you see there's a can on the floor, and you get within 2 feet of it, and all of a sudden it triggers a cutscene of you kicking it, even though you haven't actually got anywhere near it, so a noise can be made. And I didn't need that noise to be made. I didn't need to know the zombie was there. I'd rather have got down to the bottom and have the zombie jump out at me, as opposed to, I was like, here we go, come on, we're going to go this way now, and then we're going to make the zombie pop out, and you'll have your little...
He's like, please stop holding my hand.
I've touched him twice today. I'm scaring you more than the game does.
Awkward moments in Invisible
hand,
Walls
what's next?
history.
But I mean, that's the thing. It felt like in the pursuit of adding dramatical effect, they have just so overcooked it that, I mean, and if it was done in almost a campy, over the top pastiche way, I think I would get it and I would love it. Yeah. But it just feels so old.
I would say that pretty much everything you just talked about, every fucking video game does.
I don't think every
modern
does.
action adventure game does the same exact shit. And for some reason, there are a few people who've decided that they're not okay with it anymore. It's like, which is fine. If you're like, look, I'm over QuickTime events. I'm over a lot of tropes in action games that I've been playing for the last however many years. Because the truth is, all games do this. Almost every modern AAA action game has QuickTime events. They all have those trigger points where you walk to a certain point on the floor and the cutscene kicks off. If you're tired of that, that's fine. But what I want to see after this is the consistency. So if you decided to punish this game that severely for doing the same thing that all these other games are doing, well, then going forward, when you play that next game that has that stuff, then you better punish that next game. Because otherwise, you're going to lose your viewership. They're going to be like, well, wait a minute. Like, why does this game get a pass?
It's because they execute it so ham-fistedly.
I disagree with that.
It is
completely.
It is done so ham-fistedly that, I mean, it's... Let's take Uncharted. I mean, they've obviously looked at Uncharted, I think, in a lot of ways, and said, we want to be like that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can perhaps take this particular franchise and put it into that. But it's a half... It's not even a half-assed. It's a quarter-assed
How much
version.
of the game have you played?
I've played the Leon mission, and then the other 2 missions I only played at E3.
Right. Well, it's a 30-hour game.
Oh, look, I know.
So
I know there's different things, but I mean, I have X amount of time to play, and I just when I got to the stage of when there was things that I started to enjoy and I started to get into, I actually was enjoying wandering, doing the cathedral stuff and the cathedral puzzles. That felt like old school Resident Evil to me again. But then when it got into the other,
but see, that's what it keeps coming back to. Is that it keeps coming back to it's not Resident Evil, and I would agree with that. I will agree with that.
I think
it's not an amazing Resident Evil game, but you don't review a game and say, I'm reviewing this against the other Resident Evil games. You're reviewing it against its contemporaries. It's an action game, ultimately. While I can see fans of Resident Evil are like, I hate this game, if you just play it as an action game, it's a great game.
Then call it something else. Don't call it Resident Evil. Don't put it in the unit, or don't call it as in Resident Evil 6. Call it Code Veronica 2 or whatever. Make the not Code Veronica, sorry, Raccoon City, and make Raccoon City the action one, and do like other people do, where they do peel off different versions that fit into the environment. Don't put this version that feels like, oh, we've got to have this actiony environment. It's got to be Gears of War-ish. It's got to be Uncharted-ish, and call it Resident Evil 6. Annex it off and go off and make a better action game.
Well, I don't think they understand what made people appreciate the old Resident Evil games, because they have tried. I mean, they tried as hard as they could to make a game that Resident Evil fans will like, but they did the wrong things. Like, instead of having all this name dropping and bringing up Raccoon City and sort of creating these fake scenarios that ultimately aren't all that scary, they could have actually, they don't understand what the fans really like about Resident Evil. I think that's the big problem. It's like, oh, well, here's all the people everybody likes from Resident Evil, but it's not the people, it's the situations that those people have been put in. And I just feel like and this is kind of a new developer, this isn't even the same team that worked on RE5, I feel like they tried, and they're like, look, we're going to make this game for the fans, and so let's slow Leon down in the first chapter, and make him walk really slow so you can't run. That's not what people wanted. People wanted tension. They wanted to be scared. They don't want it to be more methodical and plotting. And I just feel like they've missed the mark as far as trying to figure out how to satisfy the Resident Evil user base. And I've been a fan of Resident Evil since the first one. I've played every game the day they come out. And I get it. I do not think that if you're a big Resident Evil fan, that you're going to think this game is amazing if you're trying to compare it to other Resident Evil games. And Mike, I feel like you have a counterpoint to this because you tried to say it earlier. But as an action game, to me, it's great. I loved playing this game. I played this game for 30 hours. I played it for 4 days and didn't want to stop. And then I got to Mercs, and I started playing Mercs and wanted to keep playing Mercs. So, I don't know. I think one thing these people have to remember is, I kind of touched on it beforehand, but when you're reviewing games for an outlet and you want people to trust your reviews, which is what makes people come back time and time again when a new game comes out to see your opinion, you have to be consistent. And look, I'm not going to call anybody out and say, oh, that person's wrong, because it's someone's opinion is never wrong. But when you start looking at some of these sites that gave this game these crazy low scores, and you start looking at the other games that they've given those scores to, I don't know, man.
Well, again,
they're going to have to answer the question for the next 5 or 6 years, so it's 4 points better than Resident Evil 6. And that's a decision that they made, and they're going to have to live with that consequence for however long the fanboys keep bringing it up. Every time they review a game, they're going to say, oh, so you're saying that game's 3 points better than Resident Evil 6? Is it really?
This opens a huge, this opens to a bigger debate, and it's something I touched on a Night Gamer last week, where I talked about Metacritics and review scores on the 100-point scale and the 10-point scale, and
Well, that's the funny thing that's ironic about this, because you dug into people last week for giving Borderlands 2 a couple low scores.
Yeah.
But now here we sit with Resident Evil 6, where we have a couple people who have kind of strayed off and given it a really low score, and you're defending them in some ways. Now you're flipping the coin.
Well, again, I'm basing this on my opinion, because that's all reviews are. They
I don't like Borderlands 2. I would rather play Resident Evil 6 10 days a week and 4 ways to Sunday before I play Borderlands 2.
That's why the games industry has a wide variety of games. And I think the difference is that when you have something where, on Borderlands 2, where most of the review scores were in the high 8s or whatever, and then you have 1 or 2 that were a fair amount lower, and you read the reviews and the review doesn't tally up to the score, and that's the case. Your review for Resident Evil tallies up to your score. So therefore, there is a consistency. You obviously enjoyed the game. The negative reviews for Resident Evil, they tally to their score. The positive reviews, they tally to their score. Some people got it and really liked it. I mean, that's why the Metacritic right now, I think, is 66. I mean, it is definitely you've got half a dozen reviews, in the 50s or below, and then you've got...
No. Yeah, I have the whole rundown right here.
Well, I checked the Metacritic this morning.
There are 11 reviews of 60 or lower, and there are 23 reviews of 70 and above for the game.
Okay, well, it's a Metacritic of 60. They take out the top two. They take out the
Here's
bottom
another
two.
point. The PlayStation 3 version of the game, which is identical, not changed in any way, shape, or form, the Metacritic is an 80. So how do you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, look, again,
You can't explain it.
You said it at the beginning. It's a polarizing game. I think you have a different
But why is the
expectation.
PS3 version like an 8-something,
Well,
and the 360 version
I'll give you my theory on that. The PS3, the high reviews that came out for PS3 came out a fair while before the game launched, a good few weeks, and they were print magazines, and they were print magazines from Europe.
There's like 20-some reviews there.
But the first couple of games that came out were from the UK and from the rest of Europe, and I would honestly, they were there to sell covers and to sell magazines, and I would call shenanigans on a 90 plus for Resident Evil.
Like Famitsu's 39 out of 40.
Well, we talked about Famitsu last week, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Mike, your point. We haven't got to speak yet.
I mean, okay, I'll go on the point that let's not compare it to previous Resident Evil games because you're just gonna go in circles with that. You can compare it that way, but let's not compare it that way. The biggest problems I have with that game is I know you're saying it's still a good action game. I've always been saying that this game feels like there are so many great templates it could have copied from as a third-person shooter. Just freaking Gear. It tries to roll.
But I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the last Gears of War.
I mean, that's okay. That's you. But
another thing I think is that people are hung up on the cover system, which I agree is very clunky and awkward. I didn't have to use a cover system one time in the entire game.
Okay, then
not even once.
Why'd they even bother to put it in
because
there?
If you start playing it on the harder difficulty settings, then you do need to use it.
I'm playing on professional right now, and the game boils down to you don't use cover as they intend it to be used. You don't want to go into their cover system. You want to find walls that kind of get behind where you can still aim and stuff, so you don't have to use their cover system is terrible.
Well, you have to use two buttons basically to use their cover system.
They tried to do it so that the games like Gears where you push a single button, usually it's the dodge button that's the same as taking cover. So they wanted to solve that problem where I want to roll away rather than take cover. It feels like they tried to solve that, and it came out as there's just too many buttons to push to use their cover system. So what you do is you got to make sure you're not too close to a wall. Just kind of be right behind it so you still got protection and you're still shooting. But for the problem is when you don't want to use the cover system as it's intended, these arenas, these level designs are just like boxes now where it's just a giant shootout.
But you say now, Resident Evil 5 was exactly the same way.
But I mean,
in fact, I went back and started playing RE5 a couple weeks ago to prepare for this review. I'm telling you, man, they are the same game.
They're still linear. They're still linear in their design.
And you still have these little boxes where they flood with enemies.
RE6 is a little wider, though. RE5, it felt a little bit more claustrophobic at points. It felt like you were overwhelmed at times, whereas in RE6, whenever there'd be a lot of stuff, you could just run around it and get away from it.
But go look at my review of RE5, and I talk about it for 45 seconds about how you just ran away, did the quick turn, waited for them all to run at you, pop them off. When they get to you, run past them, turn around. It's the same game.
I mean, that's one of the basic strategies, but look at the boss battle in RE5 with the chainsaw. That tight corridor, you only had the little bus area. It was you had to running around was part of the strategy, but you were frantically trying to get away from that. Versus the chainsaw battles in this one, where it's boxes. You're either on the raft where you're constricted, but you just kind of run in circles. It feels like there's no strategy to it. It's just it literally is just run, turn. There's no maybe I have to take this corridor down here and lead them down here and
I played RE6 exactly the same way I played RE5. I never used the cover system. I went and played the higher difficulties once I finished it to get an idea of it, and I felt like I did need to use the cover system more often in that. It's still not required.
It's not required, but I mean...
But people are dwelling on it when it's not that big a deal of the game. But let's talk about the rest of the combat, where you have a great melee system. Did you ever figure out that you could shoot a zombie in the shoulder, spins him around, then you could run up and do like your melee finisher?
Yeah,
Like there's lots of nuance to the combat. Let's look at Uncharted. What does Uncharted have in that regard? You basically run up to somebody and mash a button for melee. I mean, there is actual nuance in the melee, in Resident Evil 6.
Is too powerful in RE6 to the point that it almost breaks it, though. The fact
It was
that
like that in RE5 too, though.
In RE5, you actually had to trigger something to do the melee. You actually had to shoot, engage an enemy. Now you can just run up and like start off like kicking enemies. Like you don't want to like it almost.
But I liked that. I didn't like that it wasn't.
It seemed cool, but like the fact that
there's
like,
not enough variety, and I said
I'm
that
just
in the
running
review.
up and jumping, like running up to. The strategy is run to an enemy, jump kick them so they're in stagger, and then you do your suplex or whatever to finish them, and then they're on the ground. It's like, why am I even bothering with a gun except on bosses and stuff? And what is
the problem with that though?
It's fun to an extent, but then the problem is that you said the camera was the same as RE5. Well, now you're moving. There's all these new mechanics going on. That camera is still zoomed up. So many times the camera would be disorienting or just too tight on me, and I'd like whiff a kick, or you're trying to like aim, and you're trying to like even with the quick turn, the camera just wouldn't follow correctly because it was so like zoomed up with the movement. They just didn't tweak some of the base mechanics that like it felt like you were having
I honestly
to fight
had
some of the
no
things.
problems with any of that.
I mean,
none of it.
I learned to live with them and worked around them, but like it was not the most well put together like shooting mechanics or like the melee system. I think they tried to put the stamina on there, which
But I
toned it
think
down a
you're
bit.
going back to that argument that you said you weren't going to go to, which is you're saying I don't care if it's a Resident, but you are. Like you're bothered by the fact that you're not using guns like you did in the old Resident Evil games.
It's supposed to be
I
a
don't mind it.
shooter.
I would. What are you saying? What is it supposed to be? That's the base problem you're having. Is you have a preconceived notion
why do you give me guns?
of what it's supposed to be.
I have guns. It's supposed to be a shooter. There's a bunch of
shoot guns. You didn't shoot any guns in the game?
But the game's not making me want to
You also
use
have
them.
two fists.
You want to rely on
Again,
something
it's all going
together.
back to what people's preconceived notions of what this game should be instead of what the game is.
Well, and that's basically down to Capcom. And I've said this before. If you're looking at a brand, you're looking at Resident Evil. You put Resident Evil 6, and you don't put Raccoon City. You don't put Code Veronica. You don't put Stars or whatever next to it. People have an expectation for a Resident Evil game. Now this, I mean, like I said before, it feels like they're trying to be all things to everybody in this. They split this up, and instead, and I don't know if there's this phrase over here in the UK, but in the US, but in the UK we have a phrase: "Jack of all trades, master of none."
Right.
And I think that's what this game does. It tries to be too much to everybody, and yeah, it's a 30, 40-hour game.
But again, it's just like Resident Evil 5. It did the same exact stuff.
But I'm saying the mechanics in RE5 feel better. Let's say it is.
But
it is what it is.
I enjoyed RE6 better. I enjoyed the melee. I wish there was more variety. I wish that I didn't do the same finisher every time. But the actual feeling of playing the game, like I enjoyed playing Resident Evil 6 more than Resident Evil 5.
And I think that's the disagreement I have, is that I think that whatever it was trying to be, without preconceived notions, I just didn't think it executed any individual part very well. The shooting parts, Gears, another game, third person does it better. The melee stuff, it was like.
Has there ever been a game that did everything the best in its class ever?
But
there's some that have come close. I mean, they try to be like Vanquish. Vanquish did the shooting and the melee stuff like that way better than this game
but
did.
the rest of it sucked. Like the story.
Well, the story is supposed to be campy in that game, but
there you
was
go.
cheesy.
Supposed to be. You can't just say something is supposed to be that
it was
way.
a good campy story.
You just review it for what it is, and it had a shit story. I mean, again, it's a
but
game.
I interpreted it as
no
like
game
campy,
has
though.
ever. No. So you think it's you're playing through the old Resident Evils right now? Definitely campy. They weren't intended to be campy.
Yeah,
So how do you make that determination that it was supposed to be a certain
The only
way?
thing I can say about playing the old Resident Evil, like, I'll
But
give it this.
But
RE2
that's why
right now,
you have to flush all that shit down the toilet when you review a game, because you can't determine what's supposed to be and what was intended. You just review what is there.
But you have to draw upon stuff to compare something to, or else you're just saying what it is. That's like a description.
Well, you
almost.
can still say
have
whether
to-
it's good or bad. You saw my review. I give it lots of criticism. But when you're playing a game for 30 hours, if you look at these really low scores, these reviews, they talk about the same problems that I talk about. I mention the same exact issues. But the difference comes in, how much did that impact you across a 30-hour entertainment experience? Yeah, there are 3 instances in the game where you pretty much automatically die. They throw you into a quick time event, and you get killed. And then maybe
I would say there's more than that because
I counted 3.
There's a few of those. I mean, just even in the Leon mission. And
But people hang on that like it's
no.
through the whole game. It's not.
So that's 3. 3 times I can think of. First time was the train coming down the tracks. You hear her scream that the train's coming as you're in a bunch of zombies. You don't really know which way it's coming from. That takes you out. You learn from that. And
but
then
see, I never died there.
Okay. Well,
and would you rather earlier you were upset that it took over the game? Let me just. I want to get to my point before you go on.
I want to finish my entire example.
You complained about the can kicking thing. So here, would you be happy if they took you out of control and moved you out of the way of the train?
No, let me finish. Let me finish of giving the examples, because that one, I'm in the middle of the zombies. They're all coming down the one track. The train comes down the same track. I flattened against the wall. That didn't work the first time. I learned from that lesson. Got out of the way just in time to get all the zombies killed by the train, but I didn't. I learned that for that lesson. But then there's the other ones. For example, later on in that level where you get to the gas station and all of a sudden the truck comes in from nowhere, and you've just gone through this battle. You've set fire. You've shot a couple of zombies, and again this truck comes in out of nowhere, and if you're positioned the wrong, in the wrong area, you get toast, and all of a sudden you're back to restart, and that to me is just
so what?
It just feels.
And 8
cheap.
seconds later, you're respawned. Is that 8 seconds really bothering you that much?
It takes you out of it. It takes you out of the flow of it.
You're basically wanting to just hold forward and walk through the game, Marcus. You want no resistance whatsoever in the game?
No, I'm not saying I don't want resistance. I want a little bit more intelligence in the game design, that if you're going to throw something like that into it, just give me a chance to respond. Don't pull me out of what was a fun little experience after wading through the pub and all the other areas and getting this area. It's like, oh, this looks kind of cool. I mean, I'm saving these people. Boom, the fucking truck comes in and just yanks me out of it. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back with this game, and it just feels like it's in there. It's not even to fuck with you. It's just because this is how we have to do it because we're being kooky or whatever. The bones of the Resident Evil, of that game, the potential is there. There are things there that I got into, but every time I would be getting into it.
Again, you've played 1/4 of the game.
I've played the Leon section, and I played bits of the other
and the best campaign, at least in my estimation, by the way, is Ada's, which is the 4th one, where you play by yourself without any help at all.
The unlockable one. I just think that, and like I said, my view is I would love to see them just reboot Resident Evil and have the survival horror reboot, because the story is now unwieldy, all over the place. It's like a bad telenovela.
Well, I would say that you needed to play Ada's campaign, because I felt that way after I finished the first 3, and then there's like a huge revelation, which I hate to say, especially with that franchise, in Ada's campaign that kind of makes everything else make sense, if that makes sense.
And the problem is that me actually getting up the energy to want to play through the rest of it, and that's not.
But you're not a big fan of those games anyway.
Well, like I said, I was a fan of the first 2, and I just think.
But I'm saying like the modern third-person cinematic shooter is not your forte.
I really dug Uncharted, the Uncharted 2 and 3.
Well, it was our game of the year.
And well, I mean, again, but I'm not involved in that game of that game of the year discussion. So from my own, I really liked Uncharted 1 and 2. Was it 2 and 3?
I was just saying that's like an extreme case, because those games are kind of heavenly compared to everything else.
I mean, I really like the 2 Infamous games. I mean, I do like that.
But that's an open world game.
But I think that for Resident Evil, they can rescue this franchise. They have to figure out and have some discipline internally and say, this is where we want to go with Resident Evil. And this is where, when we want to do an action game, we're going to spin it off and it'll be stars or whatever.
I would agree with that 1,000%. Because that's really, to me, what has caused all this uproar, is that some people are reviewing it as a Resident Evil game and some people are reviewing it as just a video game.
If I see Star Wars on a box, or on a movie theater, and I go in and watch, I'm seeing Star Trek, I'm gonna get a little pissed because I have a brand expectation. And this is a venerable brand, something that's got a lot of loyalty and a lot of love, deservedly so for its early iterations. But now it's become so clouded and muddied. It needs a reboot. It needs some strong direction. And when I say strong direction, I'm not talking about bloody-mindedness, but it needs a clear vision.
Can we all agree that some of those scores are insane?
I totally agree. Anything over a 5 is really insane.
You really mean that?
Look, I will honestly say that I don't have, having read all the reviews, whether,
well,
with,
again,
with
you
the
only
lowest
played a
scores.
quarter of the game, so.
But I mean, again, having read the reviews where people take the things to task that I have issues with, that I've experienced in that 1/4 of the game, I know I mean, I took my time playing through that. I mean, I put 8 hours in to that first quarter. I'm just, exploring everything, because that's the way I do it. I can't rush from end to end. But I mean, having read the reviews, there are things in there that grate and irk, and they pissed other people off just like they pissed me off. And having read the other reviews as well, which is at the higher end, your review, I can see where people got a sense of enjoyment out of it. And like I said, that's the great thing. You have your opinion, I have my opinion. Everybody else out there will have their opinion, and it's going to be a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split.
But
and that's what makes it
also,
fun.
now that the game is
Nobody's right or
out there and you see people playing the game, you're starting to see a lot of people saying, what the fuck were these dudes on while they were playing this game?
Well,
and that is what I've seen overwhelmingly
you see,
over the
you
last
see that
3 days.
overwhelmingly. I also see overwhelmingly people in agreement because of,
you have people hitting you on Twitter who are agreeing with you.
No, I'm reading reader comments on everybody else's things. I'm looking at the user
Go to
scores on
some of the
Metacritic.
more popular internet message boards and you'll see that it's overwhelmingly people are like, what the fuck?
No, I think and I will say that some of the vitriol that's been directed at the people who gave the bad reviews is bang out of fucking order.
Agreed, 1,000,000%.
No, I mean it's just and again I mean there is some
bad.
really
Well, you basically
sick
asked for that
shit.
guy at the Wall Street Journal to be strung and quartered.
Dude, it's
I
terrible.
didn't ask for him to be strung and quartered.
Well,
I did recommend that he.
But Marcus,
doesn't
you're
review
kind of
games
like that.
anymore.
It's like if 1 week you're in here saying one thing, and the week before you're saying
But
something
I mean,
else.
some of the shit that's been directed.
No,
at
I
one
agree
particular
1,000%.
reviewer.
Like, this is
I
just-
mean, we all take our brickbats, but
Yeah.
some of the shit that's been directed at one particular reviewer.
No, it's ridiculous.
Has been absolutely fucking
Completely
ridiculous and
ridiculous.
disgusting.
I agree 1,000%. Look, it's his opinion, and I think that he exactly gave his opinion. He believes that he thought the game was that bad. Do I agree with him? Fuck no. But I don't think there was any hidden agenda there. I just think he didn't enjoy the game, and
a
you
couple
can't
of other-
attack somebody over their opinion. You can't take personal shots at somebody. It's like we saw all day. Oh, GameTrailers, payola. Look at the Resident Evil 6 ads all over. There are no Resident Evil 6 ads on GameTrailers. There are none.
I actually accused him of payola because he gave it a 4.5, and I said it should have been a 4.
And I started looking around on our site. I'm like, are there ads? There are no ads. But person after person, look at all the Resident Evil ads on this website, and they give it a bit. It's insane.
Look, I mean, we're gonna have to agree to disagree, and it's down to personal preference at the end of the day. And I think.
But there are certain parts of games that are undeniably done well or not done well. Sure, a lot of it is up to your opinion or based upon what types of games you enjoy or whatever. But dude, you can't give that game. I saw somebody gave it a 1 out of 5 yesterday. That game, you cannot give that game.
I haven't seen that.
You cannot give that game a 1 out of. I'm not going to call him out. I'm not like
But
that.
the other thing is,
Dude, you cannot give that game a 1 out of 5.
we can all.
You can't.
We can also hold, companies like Capcom perhaps to a higher standard.
But
We
you
can't have
don't use
expectations
your
of
review
them.
scores as an agenda to try to manipulate a publisher. You just don't. It's
I'm sorry.
unprofessional.
If somebody thinks a game is horrible, and that it doesn't meet up the standards expected by whether it be its peers or its franchise, I think they are.
Well, look, if you're going to give that game a 1 out of 5, you start looking at the other games that give a 1 out of 5 to, which were just straight up broken and like you couldn't finish them. Like, come on.
Well, I mean, that's 1 out of 5 was what, 20 out of 100?
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Come
might be-
on, dude.
that
That's
might be-
like that's like Saw the Log for Wii in the bargain bin at Best Buy. Like, you can't do that, man. And here's my big issue with this is that some of these people have probably convinced people to not even try the game. And to me, that's a travesty because a lot of people are going to like it.
I have
Sure,
I have
there
said
may be
it's a
some
rental.
people like you that don't, and that's fine. But a lot of people are going to like this game and love this game.
And there's a lot of people who are going to dislike it as well.
Well, there's a lot of people who, no matter what, are gonna
I would say
dislike it.
rent it. rent
sure, of course.
Rent it, rent it
That's
first.
what
The
try
demos.
means.
Yeah,
I didn't say buy it.
The demos are not exactly.
The
There's
demo's
multiple
terrible.
ones.
Yeah.
You can play through the first 2 chapters now of every character on the demos. Not the first demo was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they released another one.
But try it, rent it. I think, well, here's the thing. A lot of stuff's going to come out in the wash in the next couple weeks. There are a lot of people out there who maybe have been going to, maybe it's our website. Maybe they're not going to trust us anymore because they get it and they hate it. But there's also going to be a lot of other people that get that game and they're like, wait a minute, like, where the hell did that score come from? And so when you put your reviews out there, ultimately you have to deal with the consequences of it. And some of those people were pretty brave. And
Well, I mean, this is why it's good to have a show like this, because you put your review out and your perspective, and now basically it's not a universal one, but that's the way it is with reviews. It is one person's review, because if you start doing stuff by committee and trying to appeal to everybody, you have Resident Evil 6, and I thank you.
But Mike and I, we talked about RE6 as I was working on my review. I mean, we kind of bounced things. He had actually already played it before I even started. He had like stealthed and took it home and like finished the game without anyone even knowing about it. But he and I were bouncing ideas off of each other. It was kind of collaborative. I mean, we would talk about things that we both didn't like and kind of, gestate on them or whatever. So, and the reviews happen a lot like that here at GT, which is why we don't put bylines on our reviews, because at some point, almost every game we review, there's at least a little bit of somebody else's kind of impression in there. So anyway, from my perspective, I say at least rent Resident Evil 6. Give it a try. Like I said, if you like action games, I think you're going to like it. Try to forget about my review, everybody else's review. Just play the game and forget about people piling onto it or other reviews that are higher. Just rent it, try it. I think you'll like it as long as you go into it hoping for a good action game.
I agree. I would say rent it. I mean, rent it is definitely a way, just to see, formulate your own opinions on it.
Right.
I mean, it's so polarizing. It's not even funny.
Well, I think this is also
but I
where
think one thing we can both agree on, it is in my opinion, it's marginally better than the last Resident Evil movie.
way better.
Marginally.
all of them.
No, the most recent one, marginally.
Better than all of them.
Can I just go on record
Praise
because
from
I haven't
Caesar.
said anything? I haven't played the game at all. I just want to seem like
I thought you were just enjoying the show. I was waiting
No,
to
this
bust
is
out
great.
some
Where's my? I
popcorn.
got that popcorn.gif
Yeah.
right here, man.
Yeah. And here's one more thing I would say too is look at this moment. I know a lot of you guys probably go to a lot of gaming sites to get your reviews. I think generally that's a really good idea. But look at this game, and after you've played Resident Evil 6 for yourself, think about what scores everybody gave it. And those, if whoever agrees with you on this game is probably the people that you should start listening to for your reviews. I mean, people always say, like, where should I go? Like, you should find the people who like the same things in games that you do. So if you hate Resident Evil 6 and we liked it, then maybe when we review games in the future, you should take them a little more lightly. But I have a feeling that after you play Resident Evil 6, that's not going to be the case. So have at it. Have fun. Hope you like it.
We're up against the people who really run this country. In a very dangerous game.
All right, that's it for episode 227. A pretty damn good episode, I do think. Lots of good games, lots of good discussion, lots of differing opinions. That's what makes Invisible Walls, hopefully, a show that you enjoy watching week after week.
And subscribing to on iTunes and writing reviews.
And giving us a 5-star review on the iTunes.
Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter. Anyway, just a reminder, next week, Zombie Week, get the iOS app, Android app coming.
Dishonored, XCOM Enemy Unknown.
Big games
week
next week. Yeah,
next
I mean-
week's show is going to be a lot more interesting.
Yep, the rest of the year is going to kick ass here on Invisible Walls. I'm excited to play the games. I'm even more excited to talk about them here. We'll be seeing you across the next couple months. Invisible Walls is up and out.
See this and other GT shows and game reviews on the GT Originals iOS app, available now on the App Store.